So dynamic assessment. Now I'm going to actually show you some examples of dynamic assessment. So dynamic assessment basically is a pre-test, a mediated learning experience, and a post-test. So my last name is spelled C-R-O-W-L-E-Y. How do you say my name? C-R-O-W-L-E-Y. You might say Crowley. You might say Crawley. Very few of you would say Crowley. You might say Crowley if you know me, but Crowley is the most common pronunciation in the United States of that name, by far. So common that several of my cousins and my brother Charlie, who's a doctor, he actually says his name is Crowley because they didn't want to deal with people saying, Crowley? What's that? What? Now, if you got it wrong and you said Crowley, I might say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you know that? That's my name. It's very common in my world. I'm testing you from my world. Now, and I actually am really worried about you because I've said my name several times intentionally during this talk. So you would be able to hear it. Why didn't you pick it up? Why not? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you is nothing. What's wrong with me is assuming that what my experiences and my beliefs are about a certain thing is something that you would have to have. So, just so you know, when I lived in Ireland, I found out that in County Clare, they pronounce my name Crowley. And in County Cork and Waterford, they say Crowley. And it's become widespread in Ireland to also say Crowley. It's just sort of taken over. And in the United States, it's very rare to find a Crowley. It's almost all Crowleys. So my pretest of you was, you probably said Crowley or Crawley. And I would say, failed. That's going to be one of my X's that indicates you have a disorder, disability kind of thing, right? Now, instead of that, we did a little mediated learning experience. I explained to you that it's Crowley, and it's weird, and it's in Ireland. Here's the historical thing. And crow, just to help you remember, it's crow like the bird. Crowley. Okay. That's our mediated learning experience. Now I'm going to ask you, how do you think you pronounce my name? C-R-O-W-L-E-Y. Crowley. That dynamic assessment allowed you to acquire information that was not part of your prior experience. That's why dynamic assessment is so important. That's why people who are evaluators know to pay lip service to dynamic assessment, but don't use it for the most part. I'm going to show you a little bit more. What does New York State, for over 20 years, say about this? Consideration should be given to the student's ability to adapt to new learning situations and the potential for the student to modify and apply new skills to a variety of different areas through active learning. This requires assessment which looks at the process of cognitive functioning rather than the end product as measured by static intelligence tests. New York State, for over 20 years, has said you've got to consider dynamic assessment. Static intelligence tests, or static tests, are standardized tests. Dynamic tests are ones that see whether the child can learn things they didn't know when they walked into the situation. So let me give you an example of how to assess cognition. This little boy, Henry, the boy who had the foster father, 3 years, 5 months old, his play skills demonstrated his strong cognitive skills. Let's see where the dynamic assessment happens. He looked at a few toys before he found the one he wanted. He chose a cash register. After a brief inspection, he figured out how to use the cash register. So there's the learning. Which button to push to open the door? He's learning. He's experimenting and learning. How to push the buttons for the number amounts and how to pull the handle to make the bell ring. He also used the cash register functionally. He found some paper that he put in the cash drawers, and then he began to sell different toys to this evaluator and his father in a highly imaginative play-based activity that he created. Wow. There you go from a child who's not familiar with a toy, who does some experimenting to learn how to be, and then creates this beautiful story, beautiful play, systematic play about a really high level, right? That should be in your eval. Not the score on the Whipsy. He described how to use the cash register for his father. All the money got to get in here, pointing to the cash drawer. Here, Daddy, this is yours, while handing his father his change. When asked how much a dollar cost, Henry replied, this $1. How much a block cost? He said, this $1. Now I want to draw your attention to a little bit of the features of Henry's language, because Henry is a child who's exposed to two dialects of English. One dialect called Standard American English or Mainstream American English, which is the dialect I speak and that Henry speaks as well, and his father speaks, and also the dialect called African American English, Black English Vernacular, African American Vernacular English, and Ebonics. One of the features, and he uses both of them interchangeably, as does his dad. I know about that dialect, African American English. I'm not fluent in it. These people are multiple dialect speakers. So just have a look, and if you see it, he says, this is yours. That is called a copula. In Standard American English, it must be present. In African American English, it can be deleted if it can be contractible. You can forget about that. I won't give you that example. But that's actually the full rule. This is yours, so the copula is there, Standard American English. Further down, this $1, he has code switched into African American English and deleted the is, this $1, deleted the copula. So this boy actually has facility with code switching between two dialects of English. Here's an example from Priya, a former student who's out in New Mexico. She was working with this boy giving some things on the self preschool. And she said, the stimulus is, show me the girl has a big spotted black and white dog. Well, the boy didn't know. He said, I don't know. And he said, I don't know what spotted is. So this is not actually the picture of where they were working. This is just from the internet. If you want mold correction, you can download this picture. But she said, oh, he said that. She said, that spot. Priya said, that's spotted. She said, oh, that's what you mean. And immediately in the moment, he learned the concept and applied it to the picture. How about this? So that was your static assessment. He didn't know. Dynamic assessment. He acquired it very quickly and applied it. Emily also displayed the ability, Jinny Soo Young is one of a former student as well, Korean speaker. Emily also displayed the ability to learn words quickly, again, looking at dynamic assessment. When the examiner was telling Emily the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, she did not know what porridge was, and the examiner explained it to her. When playing later during the assessment with the examiner, when asked by the examiner what the baby wants to eat, Emily responded, porridge. Here again, Emily showed she acquired something she did not know before the evaluation. That's your dynamic assessment. Now, before we go into this, I want to show you a little bit of dynamic assessment that I learned from someone named David Usdan, who's a bilingual psychologist, excellent bilingual psychologist here in New York City. So if you would come down to this, it's a little bear, a lion. It's the Columbia mascot, a lion.
Can you start that again?
Sure.
Let's just start that.
From here.
You come over here.
So if you come over here, I'm going to show you some more dynamic assessment. This I learned from a bilingual psychologist named David Usdan, who uses this in his evaluations of preschoolers and EI children. So all you need for this one is a spoon and a little guy. He uses a rubber ducky, but we actually decided to use a small lion mascot, Columbia's mascot of the lion. There's a little thing that says Columbia on it. So what David does, and I was at an evaluation where he did this, he does this. And with the child looking, he might do it again. And then he gives it to the child to do. Now, frankly, it took me a couple of times to learn exactly what to push and where to put the line. So then he shows the child, he can do it non-verbally. You put the line here. Let's see if that's going to work. And then you push this end. And he might do it twice, or once, and see if the child can do it. And then he does it again if the child doesn't do it. And what he learns is whether that child can learn how to do this activity, whether they can learn a nonverbal task. It takes a little bit of cognition. I want you guys to try it because you think it looks really easy here. Where do you put it? Do you put it here? Do you put it here? How do you have to bend? Oh, how do you have to make sure it sits? Rubber ducky's easier. And then, and what I love about this, it's fun. The kid loved it. He was a little boy. He was cognitively typically developing, who had was on the had autism spectrum disorder. But we were able. David was able to learn, and I learned with him that this boy really could pick up these nonverbal tasks so quickly because he was a very bright little boy. So thanks to David. It's another example of dynamic assessment. What I love about that example from David is he uses that rubber ducky with the spoon on all his cases, and he does typically developing kids with it and kids with disabilities, cognitive issues. So we can watch and see. Now he has clinical judgment, if you've done it with hundreds of kids, to know what you would expect.